Great morning, great morning, great morning. I am Nicole D. Jones, and I am just happy and grateful for another day. I'm happy and grateful for life. I don't take days for granted. I don't take you for granted. I want to come here every Monday morning and remind you that you are healthy, you are wealthy, and you are prosperous. Everything your hands go to touch, it must, it shall, and it will manifest, prosper, and grow great things because you are great. I tell you every week, we are not perfect, but we're striving for perfection, that as long as we continue to go through this journey that is predestined, preordained, fixed fight, we already win with our head up, our good intentions forward. That's what we're called to do. Okay. So we're not looking to be perfect. We're not beating ourselves up if we don't have a perfect day, because at the end of the day, every day is going to come with something. All right. So we're talking about relational intelligence. I'm trying to get my notes up, and we have gone up to the point, or we are at the point where, and go back if you need to see what we've done, the steps we've done. But this week, I want to talk about when it comes to a point where you cannot move or adjust or shift a relationship, and you have to actually eliminate it. All right. Because sometimes you just can't align relationships. Sometimes relationships, you just have to let them go. Okay. So you have to know that repositioning is not always possible when you're coming to realign. Okay. If a relationship is unproductive, if it's unhealthy, if it's abusive, if it's toxic, if it causes more negativity than it does positivity, then that is something that you have to be able to eliminate and remove for yourself. All right. You just can't avoid it. Okay. And I know that sometimes that's hard. For most of us, it's hard. All right. Because we have attachments, we have feelings, and even if you're one who follows Christ, or has a belief, you feel like it goes against your belief or what you're supposed to be doing and all these things. But this is the thing. We've got to go in knowing that sometimes elimination is necessary, it's mandatory. Sometimes when something gets to a point where you're having to choose between yourself and that thing, we have to get to the point where we can choose us. Okay. So you got to know though, like when you're in relationships, there's steps to eliminations too. Okay. You don't want to eliminate unless you're doing it the right way. All right. You cannot do this step right unless you do it the right way. So what is the right thing? Everything is mental. Everything is mental. Okay. Everything, you have to be in the right position, the right perspective in your mental place, your mental state. All right. So let me see. Let me see. What do I want to tell y'all? I'm sorry. Let me see. We can assume that people in our lives are always supposed to be part of our life, but that's unrealistic. Okay. That's unrealistic. Like, sometimes we just base people being in our lives on the wrong things, because this is the thing. People can be a good person. They can actually bring and contribute something to you. Sometimes we keep people in our lives because of the value or the things that they bring to us. Okay. But you have to understand that sometimes, depending on where you are, when the value begins to devalue you, you got to shift your perspective about it, because nothing that comes into your life to enhance you should destroy you. Okay. And it may have been beneficial, and it may have been of value to you in a season. It may have been brought into your life at that time to teach you something, to get you in the right direction. But when you get to that crossroad, sometimes elimination has to take place. Okay. So listen to this. Sometimes holding on to things, well, no, anytime we hold on to something longer than we need to, it becomes dangerous. Okay. It becomes dangerous because it's toxic. It becomes dangerous to your soul. Remember that you have to be a good steward over your soul. Only you control what can come in to your soul. So sometimes as we shift, things change, seasons change. Think of a relationship, okay? A friendship. You may be, for me, I may have been single in my singleness at one point, with girlfriends that I've had that I've known since my 20s. We still know each other. Some of us are still single, some of us are married. There are things that shift, okay? Now, some of the shifts we can reposition and realign, but if I still have a friend that is living like we were in our 20s, I may have to eliminate that, okay? Because it may be bringing trouble to my door, all right? Like, it has nothing to do with the person. It just has all to do with maybe where we are in our journeys at this time, okay? So you've got to learn to shift your perspective and look at elimination in another way. It's not a negative thing. It's not a bad thing. Okay. It's an emotional thing and it can be a hurtful thing, but is it a necessary thing? All right. You've got to learn how to make sure that you're in the right perspective, you're in the right place, and you have to be willing to look at the whole picture. You can't chop the whole picture up into little bits and pieces. Okay. Because you may have love for this person, and out of the love that you have for the person, you may not want to let them go. But if holding on to them is something that is hurting the overall unit of you, you got to evaluate it. Okay. So here's the thing. And you got to know that people's hearts change. Okay. People's hearts change. You may have had a ride or die. Y'all may have been someone that you've had a lot of, a long-term relationship with. Like, I could have a friend that we've known each other. I have friends. We've known each other for decades. So there are times in our life where we were going through things at the same time. We were striving for things at the same time. Some things I may have accomplished, they didn't. Some things they may have accomplished, I didn't. But you got to be careful because the heart of man can sometimes turn. All right. If you have someone who's looking at you, their support could become jealousy. Okay. Now, it does not mean this person's a bad person. It does not mean none of that. This is something internal with that person. But when that internalizing or that internal what is the word I'm trying to think of? Competitiveness and all that, when it starts to turn against you, you've got to learn how to see it, and you've got to learn how to evaluate it. And in that evaluation, it may lead to elimination. Okay. But then you got to wrestle through, like, you love this person. Y'all got all this history. Listen, history is not enough when the new history becomes destroying and damaging to you. Okay. And you got to be careful, because when you leave people in these places, it becomes destruction to you. All right. Because if you leave someone in that space, number one, that space is not open for whomever's supposed to be there. But number two, it will begin to destroy the things that you have built. If you built a business and you have someone that you've known that is hating on you and you don't even realize it, are they going to help you build your business, or are they going to be destroying it behind your back? Okay, got to think about that. All right. And you got to remember, time doesn't bring character. Okay. You can't create someone's character. All right. Time helps competence. Training helps competence. They just get to know you better, but that don't mean that it brings character. All right. So, so you got to know that there are times where you got to eliminate professionally, personally, and you got to know when and how. Okay. So if it's prompted, I'm going to read this part. If it's prompted by the Spirit, this step is not a matter of selfishness, it's a matter of stewardship. Because sometimes we feel like we're being selfish when we got to remove people from our life, okay? But you got to remember that no one is a steward over you but you, okay? You have to be a good steward of your soul. So it is not a matter of selfishness, it's a matter of stewardship. It's a matter of recognizing our responsibility to be a good steward over the life God has given us. Part of stewardship, of stewarding that life, the scripture teach includes guarding our hearts. That's from the book of wisdom. That's in Proverbs, all right? And being a good steward over those to whom we give access to the emotional and relational realms of our lives. Elimination is not a matter of convenience. It's a matter of calling. Whew. All right. So this is the thing. You got to know that, you know, and I say it all the time, even with the vision of the meal plan, like you are your own book. Okay. You know, we celebrate chapter 50, chapter 40. You are your own book. Okay. So you have to be a good steward over your soul, your journey, and your story. All right. Now, when you go to start eliminating, because it's a process to everything, all right? Because everything we've got to shift our mindset, okay? So there's a process to everything. Elimination, it can't be emotional. It can't be impulsive. Like you don't just eliminate someone because you get mad at them, all right? So now you and your homegirl or your homeboy beefing, and now you just mad and yeah, they gotta go. Oh, that's it. No, it's like a process, okay? It's a process, because when you start doing stuff like that, it's emotional. All right. When it's emotional, it come back and it bites you in the butt. I promise you. Okay. Some people, when people come and talk to me about leaving a relationship and I see them they keep going back and forth and back and forth, I'll ask them, like, the first thing I ask, are you being abused? Because of course, if it's an abusive relationship, and know that abuse is not just physical, that is emotional, that's physical, it's mental, it's verbal. There are so many different types of abuse. So my first question is always, are you being abused? Is there abuse? Okay. When they say no, so they just got into an argument, this, that, and the third, I tell people, you better stay. You better be. And the reason I say this, because when you go back and forth in a relationship, you really weaken your voice and you weaken your posture, because then that other person begins to look at you like they just gonna be mad, then they'll be back. That's why it's hot-headed people. Think about it. When you are dealing with someone who's explosive and they just hot-headed and all emotional, they do stuff and you be like, they'll be back. Okay, you got to understand, this is why when you are really looking at something, you got to look at the whole picture. You can't make emotional decisions in it, all right? Because it weakens your voice and your posture, okay? So make sure that you're not doing it out of emotion. So things that you need to know, and what times when you should be ready to eliminate a relationship is when they become counterproductive, emotionally toxic, spiritually regressive, or physically harmful and dangerous. All right? You need to eliminate those things, okay? Now, man, I feel like this conversation is so tight. But it is tight, because when you think about removing and eliminating people from your life, this is like a pivot, all right? So it's not something that you just decide or you can actually do overnight. You got to really think about it, and you got to think about it from the perspective of you. Okay. So, and then you gotta understand that, like, because in everything there's a risk. Okay. So the reason you got to take the time is you got to think about Jesus. All right. Now, remember he had it was Peter, I believe it was Peter and Judas. Both of them betrayed them. All right. So you can have someone who betrays you. You can have betrayal, but you gotta know that with Peter and Judas, I'm pretty sure it's Peter and Judas, the posture of their heart. Okay. Betrayal happened in both, but what was the posture of their heart? You got to know someone's heart posture. All right. You don't eliminate someone because they had a bad day or a bad month. Sometimes they may have a bad year. Okay. But what is their heart posture? What is it? Are you a product of, because there's self-elimination and there's external elimination. Now, if it's just someone who's having a bad day and bad, they just bad, they just the Debbie Downer and they can't get themselves together. I promise you, self-elimination is going to happen. All right. That's not even the elimination that you're going to have to do. They're going to self-eliminate themselves because it's going to come a point where you're going to have to protect yourself from their foolishness or their pain or their hurt or whatever they're going through, as long as they don't want to deal with themselves. Okay. But then there's an external elimination. There's an elimination that you have to look at when someone has the heart of Judas, excuse me. Okay. You got to look at that. You've got to know it. That's why you've got to have your discernment. You've got to know how to be the gatekeeper of your soul. Oh, Lord. All right. Let me go into this. How do we do this? The first thing you got to do is pray. I'm not trying to sound all religious. It ain't about religion. It's about relationship. And at the end of the day, I believe beyond a shadow, I know we are spirit with a soul wrapped in this flesh. You've got to talk to your creator. You've got to talk to Jehovah God. You have to pray. Okay? You've got to tap into that spirit place so that you can balance the emotional. All right? Praying is what sobers your emotions. That's how it was written. Okay. Praying is what balances your emotions. Praying is what allows you to make decisions from your predestined and preordained journey versus your natural and your fleshly one. All right. You got to pray. If not, when we make emotional decisions, think about when you've made emotional decisions. Where have those emotional decisions led you? Okay. You got to pray. Prayer has to be the center of us so we can act with empathy no matter what we decide. Okay. So you can't because you got to have courage to do this, right? What did I say before? Courage eliminates fear. All right. So you've got to have the courage to do it, but that don't mean you got to be a beast in doing it. All right. Prayer is what's going to bring you to peace. It's what's going to allow you to line up and show to you why you have to do it. Prayer is for you. Okay. Because some of the decisions you have to make, especially if it's in a dating or even a marriage, like, we don't get married to divorce. That ain't what we do. We ain't spending all this money, putting all our time, willing to die to ourselves. Marriage is a death. It's a daily self-death. Okay? You got to die to yourself to become one with someone else while you trying to figure yourself out. They trying to figure themselves out. So we don't go in there wanting to be divorced. But at the end of the day, we've got to pray, because we've got to see the whole picture to remove the emotion, to make sure that we're doing what's right. Okay. Let me see. I feel like I'm on a soapbox. All right. You want to pray because you want to find peace, because then even when you're making the decision, you've got to have peace. You've got to know why. You've got to know that it's God ordained. for this person to be eliminated. You've got to get out of your own feelings because you don't want to lose everybody. And then you got to be able to plan. You've got to plan. Timing is everything. So you've got to plan. You've got to plan when you're going to have the conversation, how you going to have it, where you going to have it. You may not want to do it in a private setting, if that person, if you're afraid of that person or that a person's abusive, you may have to do it in a public setting. But then even when you think of public, you got to think of that person. Are they gonna like go black on you? Like, is it gonna be an embarrassing moment? The prayer will help line up while you're planning, because you also want to do your elimination in love. Okay, you always want to do it in love. You got to think about the golden rule. You do on the people to others as you want them to be, as you want to have someone do unto you. Mess that all up, but y'all know what I'm talking about. So you want to still, even in eliminating, it should not be ugly. It should not be aggressive. Now, it should be matter of fact. Okay, you stand your ground, but it doesn't have to be disrespectful. You don't disrespect. If you have peace, disrespect ain't even needed, because you're able to say what you need to and move on, regardless to what that other person is doing. Okay, so you got to be able to plan it. All right, you got to know timing is key, and then you got to be able to do it. The 3 P's, you got to perform it. All right, so you go through this process for yourself. You build the courage, you deal with the emotions you have to, understanding that when you eliminate, it don't mean the feelings are gonna go away. It don't mean that, especially if it's someone you cared about. But this is the great thing about this. As we're going through relational intelligence, you should become a better you. You should be walking in the best version of you unapologetically. All right. So when you're actually performing this, you should be at a place where you've grown. You should be at a place where you have peace, and you should be at a place where you're handling your emotions in a healthier way. All right. So even when it comes to pain, even when it comes to having to release someone, you should be in a healthier place. Okay. If it's self-elimination, external elimination, out of your hands, out of control elimination, okay? You should be able to you should be at a healthier place emotionally. So when that feeling comes, when you know it's something you have to do, and you start reminiscing and thinking back, there's nothing wrong with that. What becomes wrong is when we get stuck in it and we begin to talk ourselves out of what we know we're supposed to do. Okay? There's a difference, because when you go back, you're going back to an unproductive, toxic, unhealthy abuse. When you let yourself go back into that, then there's something that still needs to be fixed internally. Okay? So, yeah, 927. So just remember, you have to keep the courage. So you've got to pray. Do not eliminate anyone without doing the self-care for yourself. All right. You got to pray. You got to talk to Jehovah God. You got to line it up. You got to look at the big picture. Situations come and go. All right. But there's a bigger picture of you and that person. Look at it. You got to be true to yourself. Okay, you got to be willing to go through whatever it is you got to go through when you see it. But I guarantee you, when you are walking out the best version of you in submission and humility, not arrogance and pride, it may not feel good, but I guarantee you it is greater later. Okay, and even when we remove places in ourselves the right way, that allows the opportunity for the blessings to come down and fill it up and overflow. That's when because you're becoming healthier, that's how people can eat off of the overflow of you and not suck you dry. This is the same thing, okay? So it's 929. 10:20. Yeah, I'm an hour behind. I'm an hour behind. It's 10:29. Never want to belabor your time. Remember to stay focused, stay humble, stay positive. This week, process this. Go back and listen to this one. All right. But do it for you. All right. That you stay healthy. Okay. So I am Nicole D. Jones, and I want you to continue to have a fantabulous rest of the day. Smooches.